To say that I was excited for Samsung's Galaxy Z Fold 7 would be an understatement. I'm someone that actually uses these folding phones, or at least I used to, since the Fold 6 didn't really last that long in my pocket. But with that being said, despite this phone's $2,000 starting price, which is a small bump up from last year, I think for the first time the Fold is worth it, considering the improvements that Samsung has actually made. So I've been using the Fold since the Unpacked event. I've been using it as my daily driver, and it's been about a week now. Genuinely, I have a lot that I want to say about this thing. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you my raw, unfiltered opinion about Samsung's Galaxy Z Fold 7 and whether it's worth picking up. Before we get started though, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. I just want to say thank you so much for the support that you've been showing me. Oh my god, my straw was in the way the whole time. I just want to say thank you for the support that you've been showing me on the channel. I really appreciate it. We're almost at 60,000 subscribers, which is just incredible. So thank you for being here. Now, anyways, a couple of things that Samsung has changed off the bat. The Fold 7 is now using the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy instead of the 8 Gen 3. So there's a pretty huge bump when it comes to the performance. The phone is also now much thinner at 8.9 millimeters versus the 12.1 millimeters on the Fold 6, which single-handedly is the most noticeable change. There's going to be a lot of like comparisons here. The thing is that when the Fold is actually folded, it's just a hair thicker than the S25 Ultra by like 0.2 millimeters or something ridiculous. So realistically, when it comes to the in-hand feel, the Fold really does just feel like a slab phone now. It doesn't feel like there's a compromise on that thickness at all. And also when it's unfolded, it's only 4.2 millimeters thin, which is actually just insane. This phone feels really, really thin in the hand, and it's something that is genuinely just really nice, and it's a really nice change from the Fold 6. I do really think if you're interested in picking up this phone, you should check out a store like Best Buy or something and just see what it's like in person, because your expectations, it's not going to be what it actually feels like. I'm telling you right now, I knew that this thing was going to be thin from leaks. When I actually picked it up at the Capture event, my immediate reaction was like, holy shit. Like, is that actually this phone? And I know this sounds like I'm shilling it. I'm not, I promise. It just really does make a big difference. And that fixed one of the biggest problems that I had with the Fold. Now, the other one is the cover display. Speaking of the cover display though, it's actually crazy how much of a difference making this phone slightly wider has made to its usability. The cover display is now sitting at 6.5 inches. It's still a little taller than most phones, but now it's at a point where you can actually comfortably two-hand type. It does feel like a traditional smartphone, and after actually using this thing, I don't feel like the cover display is a compromise at all anymore. I actually think that the cover display on the Fold 7 might be preferable to a lot of people coming from something like the Ultra phones, because it's just much easier to one hand, and with the phone being thinner now, it just adds to that overall comfort. Like you can see, it's not as wide as the S25 Ultra, but I would say the S25 Ultra can at times be a little too uncomfortable for this being your only display. It's also just a really good panel. At 422 pixels per inch, it's 120 hertz, and it's being covered in Corning's Gorilla Glass Ceramic 2. Now, I've not been babying this phone at all, and from my experience, a lot of phones that I have get micro scratches from like the first time they go in my pocket, excluding the new Samsung devices, and I'm happy to say, I really do feel like this display is going to hold up, but things change a lot more when you actually open up the Fold. By the way, I'm not kidding, this is how I've been opening the phone. I've been sticking my finger in that little crevice, getting a hold of it and flicking it open. Call me crazy. I've actually been doing this every single time I've opened this phone to test the durability. And so far, I don't know what Samsung did, but this thing is holding up really well. I will say this isn't actually my phone. This is Samsung's. I probably wouldn't do this if it was my own, but they don't have to know that. I've done that hundreds of times now. This thing still snaps open. Probably can't hear that over the microphone, but even considering that thinner hinge and the thinner form factor, I'm actually really surprised at how well it's handled the abuse that I've been giving it. I've always said like the Folds are durable. They're more durable than some of the other competition that I've used. So if that's something that you care about, I definitely don't think that this is going to be a problem, but I don't know, time will tell, I guess. Anyways though, when you actually open it, the display is now larger, brighter, and wider. And apparently, the actual glass is stronger since Samsung removed the S Pen support. Now, I'll touch on that in a minute because a lot of people seem to be getting really angry about it. Fair enough. But at 8 inches now, over 7.6 on the Fold 6, The Fold's inner display is now massive, but it's not awkward. To be honest, it's been so long since I've owned the Fold 6, so the inner display wasn't shocking to me. It felt normal until I started doing things like watching YouTube videos. Even when I'm just in the app, not full screen on the Fold 7, the content now takes up quite a lot of the display, and in full screen, there's way less when it comes to letterboxing at the top and bottom, which make this phone now actually feel worth it for content consumption. Like the Fold 6, sure, you have a larger display, but when you actually use the S25 Ultra, you can get a bigger image on this phone than you can on the Fold 6, whereas on the Fold 7, it does make a lot more sense now. So when it comes to the Fold 7 as like a multimedia device, I actually think this thing is coming out on top for me right now, and it's a phone that I don't really want to go without, so I need to make sure I pick up my own. Now, it's an 8-inch panel like I mentioned, it has 2600 nits of peak brightness, and it's an HDR10 Plus display. Of course, it's 120 Hz, and for the size, the 368 pixel per inch density is actually very good. Now, I've been using the Fold's inner display for multitasking, something that I always miss having on a slab phone since it's just not the same at all. Being able to have a couple of apps open and have them act basically natively like they would on a slab phone is kind of wild. And I mean, you could take this further and add pop-out windows and whatnot, but for me, it's something that I used to use a lot when script writing on the go, because I can actually reference the spec sheets whilst I'm writing to make sure my notes are correct. And I love the Fold for photo editing. I've been going on like a lot of trips this year, and what I've been doing is using my cameras and taking some images, and it's nice to have those raw files. I upload them to my phone and I edit them on Lightroom so that I can post them on things like Instagram and whatnot. By the way, I'll put a link in the description if you want to follow me, but it's nice to be able to do that on a larger display. Although I will say, when it comes to editing photos, something that I like about my iPad is that I can use the Apple Pencil, and something that I like about the S25 Ultra, if you could see where this is going, is that you have the S Pen to make finer adjustments when you're actually using the Lightroom app. Now, I think everyone, including myself, expected Samsung to put the S Pen internally on the Fold 7. That's just not the case. In fact, they went the complete opposite way and they've just removed it entirely. So there's no support if you own the S Pen, like the accessory that you can buy that attaches to the case. You can't use it. This is a double-edged sword. And it's honestly like, it's a good and bad thing. Because the S Pen was always an additional accessory with the Fold, it was something that you had to buy on top of this device, which was already expensive, which meant not a lot of people bought them, and not a lot of people ended up using them because it was just too bulky to carry around with this phone. Like me, for example, I never ended up using it on the Fold. For me, removing this has no effect on how I use this device. But if it was internal, it would have been something that I would have actually been able to take advantage of. It's just, they're very limited on space inside, and now with the phone being thinner, I don't think this is ever going to happen. That being said, at least according to Samsung, them removing the digitizer for the S Pen single-handedly is what allowed them to make the display assembly smaller, and it still allowed them to use thicker, more durable glass to increase the inside screen's durability. So in a way, getting rid of the S Pen is what allowed them to make this phone as thin as it is and much more pocketable. And so for me, that's a trade-off that I'm personally okay with, but I understand being up in arms about it because it's never nice going to upgrade your device and it turns out you're just missing features that you had on your previous version already. And now, while we're talking about downgrades, you might have noticed that throughout this video, Samsung's eliminated the under display camera and has brought back the hole punch. Now, I have mixed feelings about this, especially after reading your comments on the impressions video, but from what I understand, almost nobody uses this camera. But I feel like that's because it was horrible before, because it was hidden under the display. It is nice now to have something that, quite frankly, doesn't look like crap on a $2,000 phone, since it's now the same 10 megapixel f2.2 sensor on the cover display, and it can record videos at 4K 60 frames per second. But at the same time, it does also interrupt your display, and that is a big deal for some people. That being said, for someone like me, I'm not gonna lie, I actually really like having this because it is nice to film yourself or be in like a Zoom meeting and use this phone kind of propped up on the desk and have it pointing directly at you. I get everyone's kind of like retort to that is, why don't you just use the cover display camera? But for one, you can just do more on this inner screen. I can have my video call on one side and have something else entirely going on the other if I'm referencing something that I'm talking about on that call. Now, this is a thing that isn't going to make sense for everyone, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to actually appreciate having a proper camera in the inner display. Now, speaking of the cameras, let's go ahead and talk about the rest of them, but don't worry, I won't make this super drawn out and boring. There's a total of 5 cameras, 3 on the rear and 2 selfie cameras. The selfie camera on the inside and outside are essentially the same. They both look great for photos and videos, and they're definitely nice to have. In fact, this is the only Samsung phone that for some reason can shoot log video on the selfie cameras, both inside and out. The rear cameras though are a mix of being exciting and disappointing considering the price though. So that primary lens is the same 200 megapixel sensor that we've been seeing pretty much across the entire lineup lately, and it's a fantastic camera. It holds a lot of detail, it's very versatile, and the video looks really good coming out of it. The 3x telephoto and the ultra wide, however, are the exact same 10 megapixel and 12 megapixel sensors that we'd seen on the Fold 6, the Z Fold 5, and the Z Fold 4. Jesus Christ. They're improved, don't get me wrong. As these phones become more powerful, so does the computational photography inside of them, but having a 50 megapixel ultra wide and telephoto has become pretty much standard now, and I think that this is a really big miss if I'm being honest. I like to take photos, I've hung a couple up over there while I'm on vacation, and I like to print them out pretty big. I have a couple in the living room as well. Doing that with a 200 megapixel sensor allows you to actually use your phone for this instead of needing to carry around. This is the worst example. I'm actually shooting on the better camera right now. But instead of having to carry around this camera right here, the A7C II, I could just rely on the S25 Ultra or the 200 megapixel sensor on the Fold. But that means that I'm limited to the 200 megapixel sensor if I want to print them out. It would have been nice to have a 50 megapixel ultra wide and telephoto. This way I'm not being selective about what photos I'm taking, and that I can just do like a dump at the end, you know, edit everything and see what I want to print. This obviously to me sounds like something that is definitely just like a space constraint thing, but there is a point where like this no longer becomes an excuse. This phone is so good in almost every way that this could be the device that I just take with me and not think about any other phone. And it's almost there. In fact, I am going to be dailying this phone, but like the cameras could have been so much better. Samsung, you already did the 200 megapixel. Give us the rest, like please. Okay, without my brain exploding though. On a side note, I think the biggest offender with the Fold 7 is not the 4,400 milliamp hour battery, which everyone seems to be up in arms about. It's the charging speed. This is definitely an all-day battery. It's actually fantastic. If I charge it at nighttime and have 100% to start the day, I am good for the rest of the day. I don't need to think about it no matter what I do on this phone. I will have exact battery numbers when it comes to my full review. That's still not yet. I want to spend more time with this and see what quirks pop up, so make sure you get subscribed. But I will say the charging speed being only 25 watts, it's terrible. It's not like the end of the world. Like the Edge is 25 watts, but when we have 45 watts on the Ultra, which is a cheaper phone, I mean, it's still a really expensive phone, but it's a cheaper phone, and we have 25 watts on the Fold with a smaller battery, mind you, it just doesn't really make any sense. Like the entire lineup could be 45. I'd be happy with that. I charge mostly in my car. I don't like to charge overnight, but with this phone, it's something that I'm going to have to be conscious about because the time that I charge this phone in the car isn't going to be enough to get me for the rest of the day. When I plug in this phone, it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to fully charge. It could be more. It says 50% in 30 minutes, but it's hot outside. And when I'm in the car, this phone does get pretty hot, but that's just because of the sun and stuff. I don't like having to be conscious about the battery life. And the reason I don't charge at night is because I almost always forget. So that is definitely like a me problem. It's just I've gotten so accustomed to just not charging at night and being able to top up in the car with Samsung's other phones. It is kind of like a little bit backwards to me. Anyways though, I'd love to talk more about this device as time goes on. So if you're interested in that, like I said, subscribe to the channel, turn on those post notifications because I have a lot of videos of the Fold 7, the Fold 7 versus the S25 Ultra, the Edge versus the S25 Ultra, and a review of the Edge coming soon, very soon actually. Thank you so much for watching this video. A like and sub is always appreciated. If you've watched all the way through, drop a turtle emoji down in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.